Good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon to everyone that's joining us live stream and on YouTube. I hope you all enjoyed the morning sessions. By show of hands, how many parents do we have in the room that have high school seniors right now? I'm going to raise my hand. Oh, let's pray for each other, okay? We're in the thick of it. And this next session, this next panel is especially great for me as a parent, but also because one of the panelists, John King, is a person that I served on an Aspen Institute fellowship with, and we haven't seen each other in ages, and I just saw him backstage, and I'm pretty sure that when you guys come to the summit, it feels like that for you guys personally. So it's definitely gonna be a good conversation. They're gonna be addressing an inflection point for higher education, and it couldn't be more timely. Moderating is Ann Kirschner, Professor of Practice and Senior Advisor to the Office of the President, and joining her are a powerhouse group of leaders. Daniel Greenstein, former president of PASSHE and now managing director at Baker Tilly. Marjorie Hess, president of the Council of Independent Schools. John V. King Jr., Chancellor of the State University of New York. And of course, Melva K. Wallace, President and CEO of Huston-Tillotson University. Let's welcome them to the stage for what promises to be a rich conversation.
Hey, good afternoon. How's the day treating you so far? Oh, that doesn't sound very warm. A little warmer, please. Thank you.
Where is everybody?
Oh, much better. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So welcome to a Revelation or Revolution. We're going to be talking about higher ed today for 38 minutes and 53 seconds and counting. I'm sure that's enough time to solve all the problems of higher education. By means of table setting, I wanted to start with something I read last week from a longtime professor at Ohio State. Anybody from Ohio here? No? Okay, good. That makes me feel better. So this is what the faculty member wrote. This has been the hardest semester in my 31 years working in higher education. Our university leaders are sending out messages that our work continues unimpeded into the future. I am grateful that they can say it because I can't. We're going to lose a lot of brilliant future researchers, cherished colleagues, invaluable institutions, our sense of safety to do the work we were summoned to our campuses to perform. And yet, higher education will get through it because we have to. And in the end, we will prove our campus leaders were right after all. Our work will continue into the future. Okay, so there's a suffering faculty member, and he's talking about the messages that campus leaders are sending out into the world, and you are all extraordinary and experienced campus leaders. So let me start first by talking about this moment in higher ed. Call it pivotal, call it unprecedented, call it unpredictable. It's certainly a moment when crisis management is the new normal. So how do you balance long-term strategy with the constant incoming that's the daily firefighting? And what's something in your background that helps you to maintain that balance? And John, let's start with you.
Sure. It helps to have been a middle school principal because one of the things that you learn as a middle school principal is adolescents go up and down, and the thing that it's a roller coaster, and part of what you need to do as a middle school educator is stay even and clear. And so I think in this moment, it's important for higher ed institutions to stay even, to be clear on what our mission is, what our values are. For us at SUNY, that means student success, research and scholarship, diversity, equity, and inclusion. I said it, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Oh, he said it.
Look at you.
economic development and upward mobility, and those are our values, and so we organize our work around those values, and the work continues. And then we have to have a clear strategy for how to respond to some of the threats, and they are significant to our institutions, and we have a very clear strategy. We are litigating a lot. Our Attorney General, Tish James in New York, I think has filed dozens of suits already in this last couple of months. We will file more, but we're going to protect our values. We have to be clear with legislators. Thank you. We have to be clear with legislators about what we deliver for their constituents and be aggressive in saying we need a bipartisan consensus that higher education is foundational to the future of the country. And then we have to educate folks on what we actually do, the return on investment, the value proposition. And if we're able to do those things, we can maintain the clarity and vigilance about what we exist to do.
Melva, I'm going to pass to you.
Yeah, I think what prepares me is that I was the youngest child, which means as a young child, if you're the youngest, that means you get beat up a lot. Your parents don't really watch you as much, so you kind of get to just get beat up and bumped along the way. But yet you turn 40 and you survive it all, right? So I think that is what prepares me the most. It also doesn't hurt that I started my career as a director of human resources in corporate America. So managing people also helps. But the advice that I would give and what I would share about insight, I'm at Huston-Tillotson University. We're in Austin, Texas. And go Austin. Go Rams. That's right. And, the stats help. And so our institution has been named the #1 HBCU in the country that puts students in the highest wage jobs immediately upon graduation. So to your point, when we're talking to legislators, people like Ted Cruz and Senator Cornyn, when I'm in their offices in DC, I'm communicating how we prepare students for the workforce. And I think that is helpful. I'm also at an HBCU, and that is a historically black college and university. There are approximately 100, shouts out to the HBCUs. There are approximately 101 or so HBCUs in the country. Our value proposition is one that we continue to punch above our weight because the students that come to our institutions are oftentimes underestimated. And we continue to ensure that, that the America that we know is strong because we continue to put black and brown people into the workforce. So with that in mind, we continue to share that message out and continue to speak the good news of what we do, but stay the course. Stay the course.
Stay the course. Good advice. With everything that's going on, however, is it a moment for boldness, or is it a moment for protective crouch or going into fetal position? And let's do boldness first. I mean, what does boldness in this moment even look like? And Dan, I'm going to pass that to you.
So, for me, boldness is about recognizing that somehow along the way we've lost the trust of the American public. And we've known this for a while, right? The Gallup polling since about 2012 has shown a continuous slide in trust in higher education. And it's become bipartisan, and I think it had become bipartisan by about 2017, 2018. And the numbers are poor, and we've known about that. And there's a reason for that. And at some point along the way, I think boldly, we're going to have to bring our intellectual curiosity to bear on the simple question of what the heck happened. And we're going to have to ask ourselves about how an organization of people who value inclusiveness have lost more than half our country. That's not inclusive. We have to ask ourselves, how can organizations which are here to lift up people and provide opportunities for all are imposing debt and seeing stop-out rates at 40+%. There's reasons that people are, we say there are 40 million people who have some college and no degree. It's an opportunity for what's it called, deregulation. It's a tragedy because most of them have debt, and I bet some of them are angry. So, I think the boldness comes in fighting for our values vigorously, and John, you've done a tremendous job on media over the last several weeks, thank God. But at the same time, I think we have to own our responsibility for tackling those problems in a meaningful way. Now is the time to use this crisis, because it is a crisis. It is an existential threat to our ability to continue to furnish a democracy, right? We have to use this as an opportunity to address the structural and performance challenges that we know we have. That it requires boldness and a tinge of humility. And I think it'll also help us begin to curry back the trust of the public, which is sacred to our operation.
Marjorie, what do you think? Boldness or keep your head down?
Well, I've never been a keep my head down kind of person, so I'm going to say boldness. And maybe I'll start by tying it to that first question, because my background, I'm a Jewish woman, and I am very blessed to have had a very strong Torah education as I grew up. And if there's one thing that teaches you is to take the long view. The story is never completely written. But it also teaches you that you have to pay very close attention to the work that you are called to do in this moment as well. And I do think that's lessons we all can use now. And it helps us, I think about the way we need to be bold. I have been doing some thinking and writing and speaking about the temptation to, as Dan warned us of, just step back into that defensive crouch. We should not be forced into a position of defending programs, policies, initiatives that were sort of second-rate or also-rans anyway. One of the reasons, for example, that DEI is such an open target is because we have continued to treat it like a peripheral side issue on many campuses. We have not, in fact, truly made the core of the institution inclusive. We have not truly, right, there's gonna be a lot of opportunities to clap because we're gonna say really good things. So we love that, but don't feel you have to. But we have not truly done that.
You can clap.
Right? If you still have an American history course and an African American history course, you're vulnerable. Why is your American history course not also teaching the history of all of the people, particularly the important history of African Americans? So we should not be defending things that were stopgap or second-rate solutions, and that is one example. Again, not true on every campus, but true on many of them. We have to do the real work. And finally, I'll say, again, from my own learning as a child and from what I see today, there has never been a better moment to imagine a truly inclusive, truly just form of higher education in America than there is right now. The best writing on human freedom has been written by people in prisons. The best writing on democracy has been written by people who are not living in a full democracy. The best writing about what higher education can be and should be will be written now when it is under such attack. We have that responsibility to be bold and forward-looking and very creative.
I want to add to that too, because here's what I know to be true. When I'm meeting with CEOs of companies, and I'm meeting with HR directors, and I'm meeting with all of these, especially in Austin, where it is just booming with jobs. I've never met anybody or a parent, when I go to recruitment events, I've never met a parent that is, when their kid decides not to go to college, that they're doing the Tootsie Roll. Like, they're like, yes, you're not going. So it is, when people say, oh, we've lost the trust, we still want our kid to go.
Yes.
We believe that, college isn't for everybody, but we want our kid to go.
Amen.
So let's just call a thing a thing. And you can clap for that over there. Because what we know, we say those things, but yet we want our family members, our niece, our nephew to go and get a college education, because we honestly really do know that you're better off with especially if you look like me. You're better off with a college degree, a master's degree, a whatever else you can get, out in these streets. Because if you're out left unequipped, you will not be as successful. Now that is data and that is #facts. That you will not be as equipped and prepared to take these jobs if you do not have the paper, the requisite paper that says that you can. So it is difficult to see the data, but it's also my reality in knowing that workforce and CEOs is saying, please help.
Can I add
So, yeah.
to that? Because, yes, and the dirty secret, and we know it, is that in many institutions, the master's degree is a cash cow.
Absolutely.
And the dirty little secret, and many of us know it, is that a good chunk of our students who are graduating from our colleges and universities aren't actually earning that college wage premium, right? And it is obviously disproportionately concentrated in black and brown graduates. So those are the kind of challenges that we need to address. And now is an opportunity to say, yep, we're on it, and we're going to get to it, because our students, and frankly our faculty and staff, I think they deserve better, and now is no time like the present.
So true.
And that's the boldness that I would say we need, is to do the things to address those critiques. So I'll give you 3 quick examples. As Dan points out, if you leave college with some credits and no degree, that is not a good outcome. And so we need to get better at completion. So at SUNY, we are scaling the ASAP and ACE programs, both of which have been demonstrated in randomized controlled trials to have a positive impact on retention, persistence, and completion. In fact, the ASAP program, which is the community college version, has been shown in RCTs in multiple states to nearly double completion rates for low-income students. So we're scaling those programs to 25 of our campuses because we're going to get better at completion. We're about the national average, but I want us to be the best at completion. A second example on the value proposition, I think you're totally right. Everybody wants their kid to have a job at the end, right? And across lines of race and class, that's what people expect. One of the challenges is internships, and one of the most important things that we can help students do while in college to put them on that path to post-college career success. And yet, it's affluent students who are doing the unpaid internships. It's a relatively small percentage of students. It's the engineering student, but not the sociology student. So we've set out a goal of internships for all SUNY undergraduates. We have a long way to go, but we want every undergraduate at our 2-year and 4-year institutions to have an internship experience. We are putting resources into that. We are launching initiatives in partnership with state agencies, industry, as well as nonprofits to get more students into meaningful paid internship experiences.
Part of this, I think, is also that because we have increasingly in this country come to treat education as though it's a private good, that it is all about you and your personal success, it's your investment and your return on that investment, very crassly in terms of dollars, et cetera. We have lost the notion that education is a collective good. And so why do institutions need cash cows? They need cash cows because the states have pulled back from funding them, federal government has pulled back from funding education, and industry has pulled back from funding education. When I came out of college, if you were going to go into banking, the bank had a year-long internship program, essentially. They paid you. You moved from department to department. You learned. That was true in fashion merchandising. It was true if you joined a large corporation. They provided that internship year at a paid salary. They have all pulled back on those programs. They do not do that anymore. So we have had to actually do more with less. And we're continually asked to do more with less to make up the societal value gap. There's what the student can afford to pay, and there's what the society needs. And colleges are having to fill that gap, and the gap is getting wider and wider. And at some point, it is just too big for us to fill alone.
Which means that setting priorities is going to be more and more important, and figuring out exactly what we need to do for our students. So let's talk a little bit about the conditions for change and the obstacles to change. One of the things that really struck me last year when I was president of Hunter College, Anybody from New York in the room? Oh, okay. It was a cheap shot, I know, but you know, it made me feel good. Anyway, students, faculty, donors, alumni, elected officials, people who write for the newspapers. I mean, the number of stakeholders that you have to navigate as a college administrator is absolutely incredible. But then there's also trustees, and I'm going to guess that in this room of august people, there's probably one or two college trustees, maybe? Okay, well, there's one here on the panel. So, you know, are trustees helping their institutions evolve? What's the best role going forward for trustees?
I can speak to that for sure. I am a trustee of a university, Centenary College of Louisiana, which is very unique. I'm on the board there. I'm a philanthropist. I give a lot, so that's the only reason I'm on the board, just to be realistic. But any board, as you know, it's give, get, or get off. And I would say that at Huston-Tillotson University, look us up, htu.edu. Follow us on social media, on Instagram, Huston-Tillotson University. We have the best board assembled on the planet. And I will say this on CNN with Anderson Cooper and Don Lemon. Like, I'm not just saying that because, you know, whatever, but they really are amazing. And so we are very intentional about, you know, who is on our board and why they're on the board. And they have been incredible in supporting, you know, giving, connecting us with their networks, and of course, working on certain tasks that we ensure that we're trying to lift up. The CEO of Indeed.com is on our board, a dear friend of mine, Chris Himes. We have the chief of people and the chief of talent for Handshake, Valerie Capers-Workman. She's on our board. The First Lady of Texas is on our board.
Why isn't
Thank you so much. And,
Yes,
and
that's
others.
Sorry.
And others.
Yes.
So we're excited because our goal is to find trustees who are very interested in Huston-Tillotson University. And so what we see with our trustees is that they are excited about where we are, excited about our positioning, and excited that we are really moving the needle in workforce, putting students in high-wage, high-demand jobs, getting them internships, and the like. So as a board member, as a president, as a philanthropist, that's what I see the role of, and to protect the institution and our credibility.
But I think, you know, there's such a big I would say what you said is true in the sector that I have built my career in, which includes your institutions, both Centenary and the one you're currently president at, which is small to medium-sized independent private colleges, right? Our boards are self-perpetuating. We choose who they are, we train them, and there's no incentive other than love for the mission. You don't join a board like that because it looks fancy on your resume, or you're going to meet the other fancy, board members that you might at a elite private institution, at an Ivy League institution. You join the board because of love, and you're there to give. And they do it beautifully and well. I'm really interested to hear from our colleagues at public universities.
It's a little different.
About what that looks like.
Yes. So you guys have been the trenches.
So
Yeah.
Dan can be bold,
The
right?
rough side of the mountain.
I'm no longer enrolled, John, so I'll try to think.
Now, I had a state-appointed board. I wasn't always in the land of milk and honey, so let me just say, I had a state-appointed board that was appointed by the governor, so I don't know.
No.
So it's a politically appointed board. Pennsylvania is a divided state. When I got there, it was a Democratic governor, and the Republicans held both chambers, and it was that was reflected in the board. But just a little context: the school that I arrived as chancellor was 14 universities. 5 or 6 of which were in or heading rapidly towards insolvency, meaning they'd exhausted their bank accounts. They were operating with a negative annual operating margin. So the board, by statute, because it had to, was taking money from those who had it and giving it to those who don't. And it's basically a train falling backwards over a cliff. Everybody's being pulled down. So the board, before I arrived, took the decision that the system needed to redesign itself in order to achieve 2 objectives: stabilize itself financially and then grow, because austerity is not either aligned with our mission or a strategy. And so in the course of the next 6 years, froze tuition for 7 years, stopped the, they had lost 27-35 by the time I left, 30% in enrollment, stopped the enrollment slide, took $350 million in operating out of our annual expenditure, reduced our headcount by 16%, and I'm proud to say we did not lay off a single member, terminate a single member of faculty. No one said thank you, funnily enough. And we began to see improvement in our student outcomes. And we increased our state investment by 35% and then got a $400 million one-time funding to invest in the system. So all of that, and, we integrated 6 universities and turned them into 2, which in university land would be like asking my grandmother to eat pork. So sorry about the reference. And my board made every single one of those decisions, drifted up to the board in some way, shape, or form. They're super hard. Some of them were with, in receipt of a protest from like all of organized labor in Pennsylvania, or the House Democratic Caucus, or whatever. So serious opposition. Every single decision was unanimous because the board understood that Pennsylvania, without public universities, could not furnish the roles that Marjorie and all of us have been talking about, that you can't imagine and don't want to live in a state which doesn't provide all of its people with an opportunity to cross that bridge into opportunity. And that was their North Star. And the politics were there, but God bless my board chair, Cindy Shapiro, shout out to her, managed that board elegantly well to that consensus. It was mission-driven.
That's a great story, Dan, and I think I too am very fortunate to have a board largely appointed by the governor. We have one person who represents the faculty senate of our 4-year institutions, one person who represents the faculty councils of our community colleges, and one student member who represents our student assembly. Everyone else is appointed by the governor, and we are all 100% united around our values. But to answer your core question, are boards a force for good or not? We're going to learn a lot over the next few months.
Yeah.
Let me be clear, and I want to be a little provocative. If a board is willing to agree to stop teaching the truth about our history, if they are willing to agree that we're going to paper over the fact that we had slavery in this country, they're a bad board.
Yes, amen.
Right on.
Blue state, red state, doesn't matter. If they're willing to walk away from the fundamental principles of teaching the truth about our history, they're a bad board. If a board is willing to sacrifice academic freedom at the altar of financial convenience, they are a bad board, right? And so that's the moment we're in. This is the time of choosing.
Yeah.
So we will know a lot in the coming months if we see folks courageously saying, as institutions, we are 100% committed to our responsibility, not only to prepare the workforce, but to prepare our future citizens. We're 100% committed to the health of our democracy. We are going to reject and root out anti-Semitism. We're going to reject and root out discrimination, and we are going to preserve the First Amendment and the right of students to express views about policies, whether we find those views distasteful or not. Right? That's the choice that's in front of board members. And honestly, I have seen a lot of lack of courage, private sector and public sector, in recent months, but I'm hoping, so I'm optimistic, I am hoping that we will see people step up and meet the moment.
That's so beautifully said.
We promised you candor and catharsis for this
Yeah.
session, so we're getting to it. Thank you, John.
If I can add one quick thing to that, because that was so beautifully said, and I agree with you 100%. We've seen real lack of courage. And we're seeing lack of courage now. We have students at all of our institutions losing their visas now without any due process, without any process for reasons that the stated reasons don't make sense and the unstated reasons don't make sense. We have to stand up against that, and boards have to as well. The only thing I would add as well to you is a board that lets its president fight these battles alone while it huddles in a defensive posture is a bad board as well. And too many presidents, particularly women presidents, particularly presidents of color, have been left out there alone, and when there's pushback, the board abandons ship. And we cannot have that.
Can I just take up the point? It's a touchy subject, and I'll screw it up, so I'm going to apologize in advance. And it is on academic freedom and freedom of speech. And, of course, you want to die on the altar of academic freedom and freedom of speech. It's a fight worth fighting for, it's a hill worth climbing, and it's an arrow worth taking. At the same time, the kinds of uses of academic freedom, right, have evolved well beyond those envisaged by the AAUP back in the 2010s, 2020, whenever it was. The kind of protest that we're seeing is very different than the protests that we've seen in previous generations, 60s, 70s. It's not good, bad, just very different because they pit student against student. There's some opportunity to think again about another one of our educational roles, which is to foster vigorous debate and discourse in a collegial and civil manner. And it goes back to the thing I haven't written anything about this because it's a little touchy, but it goes back to the thing that I was talking about earlier. There is an opportunity to say, yeah, in this arena too, we have some work to do in terms of establishing community norms and enforcing them not necessarily with the criminal justice system, but within our community. I think we have conversations that we need to have with our faculty about what is, it's not the Constitution protects you from to be a jerk, right? But that doesn't mean you should be a jerk, right? So good. That's where the constitutional limitations are, really begin to blend into what is the kind of community that we as leaders and our boards. But I think, frankly, and I agree with everything that's been said, these are hills we need to die on if we're going to die. But I don't think it's going to be as effective unless we are able to say, yep, and we've got some work to do, and we're on it, and here are the steps that we're going to take.
Do you see evidence of that happening, Dan?
He said no. Next question.
I
took the long.
I mean, just because
looking for the evidence.
We all want that to happen. Are we seeing evidence of that, or is society so polarized that we just are not capable of having those
and just to
discussions?
And remember, one of our jobs is to sort of foster and strengthen a civil society.
Our board just adopted civic discourse as part of our general education requirements across the board, across all disciplines, starting for the freshmen of the class of 26. So we're working with faculty to talk about how do you construct in the classroom opportunities for rigorous disagreement that is still respectful. How do you help folks to learn to listen to their classmate, not just to prepare what their counter-argument that they're about to deliver, but actually to hear the values and principles and ideas of their classmate. I will say one thing that I think the EdTech community could help with is that social media and many of the tech tools that emphasize going deeper and deeper into a world of one undermine our ability to do this work. And so thinking about how do we create tools that foster meaningful, constructive discourse, how do we create classroom experiences where students are working together, potentially across lines of difference, to solve problems, that would be very helpful. And also, how do we better monitor some of those other tools that actually, I think, unfortunately, seed and exacerbate disagreement and ugliness and polarization.
That's an outstanding point. And, again, I think we could learn a lot of lessons if we take our eyes off the 5 universities that the New York Times believes exists and actually looked at the whole sector of higher education, the more than 4,000 universities. I think all of us up here, and certainly, looking not only at the institutions I was president of, but at the ones whose presidents I now work with through CIC, I can come up with hundreds of wonderful stories, beautiful stories about working across differences. Campuses where the Hillel students and the Muslim Student Association held vigils together, held dialogue, conversations together. Really beautiful, amazing stories. And reporters do not cover those. The algorithms don't lift those stories up when they are reported. We have allowed a very few loud voices to stand in for all of higher education. And we've allowed that we've allowed ourselves to be judged by our absolute worst day rather than all the rest of the days. But there also has been a concerted effort by many interested parties to undermine higher education by giving voice and more attention to the worst of us and not to the best. So if you want to hear beautiful stories like that, go down to your local college. Not the one with the fancy brand name, but the small Catholic college nearby, the HBCU, the state branch campus, and you will see story after story after story that will give you a lot of hope.
So we're going to be out of time pretty soon, and I wanted to give you all a chance to pick up a magic wand and to change one structural thing about higher education that you could do without a committee and without a vote, and you could just make this thing happen. What would it be?
I'll let you guys start. I've always been starting.
All right, we'll go around. Dan, you want me to start? All right. Merit aid. I would get rid of merit aid. All financial aid should be need-based aid. No institution except very, very prestigious ones could do that alone, but we could collectively change that climate. So I would get rid of merit aid. It just becomes an arms race. It is a way of allowing the wealthiest families to get their education subsidized. Aid should be need-based.
Okay.
I didn't hear rousing applaud for that. You know why? Because you all got merit aid scholarships. I know that. I know you absolutely did. And you want them for your children.
But you didn't say take it back. I didn't say take it back.
Well, you could pay it forward by donating to your alma mater.
Okay, you've used your magic wand. Dan, over to you.
It's a weird one, but I would push. I would try to get decision-making and problem-solving as close to the people who are experiencing the problem as I possibly can. We're so hierarchical, and it actually acts as an impediment on our clock speed in solving problems because teams of people work together, and they have to report up to their principals who have to find each other somewhere in a coffee shop, and then it drifts down, and it just takes forever. And so how can we empower our faculty and staff in a different way so we can move more quickly and get more engagement in the problem solving?
In 1980, the Pell Grant covered 80% of the costs of public higher education. Today, it's about 28%. So if you want to look for the source of the student debt crisis, it is a 40-year-plus policy mistake of allowing the purchasing power of the Pell Grant to deteriorate and transferring the burden to students and families. So I would start with doubling the Pell Grant. That wouldn't take us all the way back, but that'd be a good start.
I was going to say doubling the Pell Grant. And so coming from an HBCU, we've been punching above our weight for so many years. We have educated 80% of the black lawyers, 75% of the black scientists, 65% of the black judges and attorneys. And I would like to submit that I hope that one day we find it to be not robbery to support our nation's HBCUs and to ensure that these nation's gems are continued to be elevated and to be lifted up. It is a crime, if you will, that some of our institutions, that the facilities don't match what we put out into the world. That although we get the Pell Grant isn't there, that these are students that are oftentimes underestimated, that we continue to do the work. So I would love to see the Pell Grant doubled, that we see more need-based aid, to have more students in a room like this that can continue to contribute to the workforce and contribute to the American society. So that's what I would like to see, if I had my magic wand.
So interestingly, none of you have said anything really structurally about the institutions themselves. Back to your point, Dan, that we have a lot to own up to ourselves in institutions of higher education. Do you feel like the governance structures of our institutions? I'm going to go there. Do you feel like we are we ready for change?
No.
I would strengthen. This may sound odd, but I think one of the weakest links in shared governance is not the dialogue between groups, although I do think that can always be improved, but faculty governance is very poor and weak on many campuses. Faculty often elect a loud voice, but not an institutionally minded voice. They often undermine their own governance structure by refusing to accept the recommendations of the committees that they have elected. They don't go to the meetings, they don't participate until there's something that they care about, and then all of a sudden they want to show up and have a voice, even though they haven't educated themselves on the issues. So I do think faculty governance needs to be strengthened as a part of strengthening shared governance, and we don't talk about that enough.
I hope you all feel that we've used our 39 minutes well. I think there's a lot of courage and wisdom on this stage with me. So please join me in thanking our extraordinary team here.
Yes, thank you to our panel for your courage and especially their candor. All right, everyone. Girl, yes, yes, and amen. I'm sorry. Awesome. All right, up next, get ready to hear from some serious builders in the EdTech space. Moderating the convo is Ben Quazzo, partner at Accel, and he's joined by two founders who have taken their ideas to scale globally. Sam Chaudhary, co-founder and CEO of ClassDojo, and Andrew Su, co-founder and CTO of Speak. Let's give them a warm welcome.
Well, guys, I was told we are the warm-up act for Andrew Ng, so buckle up. Got a high bar. Thanks so much for joining me. It's a pleasure to get to talk to two friends and more importantly, two EdTech entrepreneurial titans. Sam, co-founder, CEO of ClassDojo, the connective tissue between kids, teachers, and families across the US and across the world, and Andrew Su, the CTO of Speak, a language learning app that teaches users through conversation and speech to reach fluency. So thank you both. This panel is called Masters of Scale, and so I want to give you a quick sense of scale for these two businesses. ClassDojo engages with 51 million students across 90% of US elementary schools and across 180 countries globally. And Speak has over 10 million downloads across the world, and in its first market of South Korea, over 10% of the entire country's population has used Speak to learn English. So it's quite an accomplishment to you both. I want to kick off and talk a little bit about your backgrounds prior to starting each of your businesses. Education is, of course, a core tenet to you both, and you both have very unique stories around education. So if you could talk to the audience a bit about your journey and how that ultimately led you to starting a company in EdTech. Sam, let's start with you.
Sure. Hey, everyone. So I actually it started quite early for me. I went to quite a weird school. So the school I went to in middle and high school insisted on kids teaching as well as learning. So I actually taught for probably about a third of my time as a teenager. I was an economist after that, and I thought I was going to be an academic. I thought I was going to do a PhD. The month before I started, one of my professors asked if I would help one of his friends with their school. And so I went to the school to go and teach for a little bit, and it turned into helping them with a whole bunch of stuff, helping turn the economics department around, the maths department around. And from there, I went to McKinsey, helped build their education group in London, which was mostly figuring out what makes great public education systems really great around the world, in different countries around the world. And then I left and met my co-founder, Liam, who's a genius. He was a video game developer. He built one of the world's biggest kids games, and he was doing a PhD in computer science, focused on helping kids learn. So we met, we got talking about some of the big ideas we could work on. And to me, one of the biggest ideas is how do you help the most number of people make the most of their talents and capacities? Because to me, that's like the engine for progress in the world. So we got talking about that and how we could help with that, starting with younger kids. And that got us out to the Bay Area, and that's where Dojo kind of started.
That's great. And Andrew, talk a little bit about your journey as a student.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I've had a pretty unusual educational journey as a child. I was actually homeschooled from ages 8 through 12, and then it was a very accelerated path after that. I actually went to college when I was 12, and then grad school when I was 16. And then I dropped out of grad school to do the Teal Fellowship. That's how I got into startups. And I think I've just always, through that journey, had this very fundamental belief that there are some shortcuts in the universe. It is possible to learn things 10 times faster than what's possible. And I always felt like one day this would be scalable to many more people across the globe. And it's amazing because it feels like much of the technology is finally here. And that is kind of what Speak is ultimately working towards as well. So it's a very exciting moment in time.
And so Sam, I've known you for almost a decade, Andrew slightly less, but the two of you have me beat. And so as three San Franciscans in kind of a small EdTech universe, talk about how you two originally met and what that was like. Sam.
Right, so we got into this incubator called Imagine K-12, which is now part of Y Combinator. But we came out to the Bay Area. It was a summer program. I don't know if I should go on record saying this, but we were here on a 90-day tourist visa, and that's where we started the company. So it was a very accelerated timeline. We had to go from having landed in America, never having met anyone before, to ultimately raising a seed round for the company. But we were working furiously through this 90-day period, and we were in this building, 395 Page Mill Road, and they had some ping pong tables and all the usual trappings of a startup incubator building. And that's when we ran into each other, because you were running Airy Labs, right?
Yeah, so I had recently dropped out of grad school. All of my classmates, it was at Stanford, so startups were kind of in the air. All of my classmates were either leaving to start a startup or join a startup. So I got into StageX, which was the Stanford Startup Accelerator, and we happened to be working out of the same building. And I just remember one day meeting this very tall, very tan, hyper-competent founder. So yeah,
it wasn't me.
Each other for so long.
I'm like 80% sure 395 Page Mill Road was in Silicon Valley, the HBO series, so it would make sense. All right, let's start talking about your journeys at ClassDojo and Speak. Both of you are proud Y Combinator alums from the last decade, kind of Paul Graham disciples. You've taken those startups into high-growth companies in this decade. As you look back, what were some things you got right in your assumptions about the opportunity, and maybe something that you were wildly off back, if you can think of demo day or the early days? Andrew, start with you.
Yeah, so one really cool thing about Speak, I think, is that we have had the same product vision since the very beginning. We did YC in winter 2017, and really the macro bet that we founded the company on was that speech models, speech recognition and synthesis models, language models, were starting to go like this in capability. It was just the beginning of that curve, and we felt like it was a very obvious future where people would be learning languages and achieving fluency, not by paying humans hourly, but through these types of AI systems. And that was just an extremely obvious future. We knew it would come true. I think where we missed was that it took way longer than expected to reach our initial product market fit while trying to time that curve, if you will. So the first few years were pretty tough, and there were probably several moments where we almost quit. But I think the belief in that vision of the future and just our absolute rock solid certainty that it would soon come true was really what kept us going. And it did come true.
And Sam, how about ClassDojo?
Yeah, well, so we got to America. We'd never lived here before, never worked in the education system. And so there were a couple of things that kind of just stood out as odd to us. So we had this enormous mission. We wanted to give every kid on earth an education they love. When we looked at the companies that were growing up at the time, very few of them had reached tens or hundreds of millions of people. And so we had this dilemma where look, if we want to reach every kid on earth, we need to have a good plan to get to scale quickly. And it seemed to us that one of the better ways to scale was going to be to go straight to the people, so serving teachers and kids and parents directly. And now you remember this was around 2012, so smartphones were just becoming a thing, and people were getting used to the idea that you could just download an app and start using it. And I think in the workplace, people saw this with Slack. People just bringing Slack into work, and they started using it. And Dojo started as a communication app for teachers and kids and parents. And we started to see this thing where teachers would just install Dojo, They'd bring it into school, and then it would start to create this community around the classroom. They're sharing pictures and videos. What took us by surprise was how much it spread. So I'd been a teacher, but I hadn't realized how much teachers spread the word about things that are working for them. So it really took us by surprise. We would land in a classroom. We'd then start to expand through the school. Like one teacher would tell the next, It would jump to the next school. I remember because I was answering all of our support tickets that first year, but we were in like 60 countries at the end of year one. And so I think that moment in time was kind of an amazing moment where I think we got right that it made sense to serve the people directly. And that really, that we now serve like tens of millions of teachers and kids and families. The crazy thing is it's still all been word of mouth. So it's still been one person telling another, which has been kind of amazing. I think the thing that we got wrong is basically almost like the flip side of that. I think your strengths are often also your weaknesses. 4 or 5 years ago, we started to get so much inbound from schools and districts. Partly through the pandemic, everyone realized you needed to stay in touch and communicate with one another. And so we had one of the larger districts in the country kind of call us and say, hey, we need to talk about this dojo thing. And I thought we were in trouble. So we get on the phone and they're like, look, half our schools use this thing. We don't really know what it is, but like, can we get more of it for the other schools? And we didn't have anything to offer. So I think for a long time, we kind of had this miss of like not working very closely with schools and districts. That led very quickly to us building Dojo for Districts, which is kind of our district offering. And that's been the last year or two has been an attempt to course correct that. And I think we're in a good place now, but we really let that go for like quite a long time.
And so Andrew and Sam, over a decade, Andrew almost a decade. You guys have seen now multiple waves, early to mobile, then COVID, and now kind of AI. As you look back during that journey, was there a defining moment or decision you had as an executive team that you felt that you really nailed and provided kind of a strong inflection point for the business? And I ask this because I think in the short term, it's harder to take a step back, but after you see multiple external waves, it gives you guys a really kind of privileged position to look back and see how some big decisions came to be. So Andrew.
Yeah, so probably the defining moment where we made a big company decision, I wouldn't call it a pivot, it was more of like a relaunch, is choosing South Korea, teaching English in South Korea as our market to relaunch. We really rebuilt the entire app. This was through 2018, 2019. We redesigned the entire experience through all the product and market learnings that were sort of hard won over the past few years. And I'm not Korean, by the way. It's like that was a crazy thing to do. And we were running the company from San Francisco in this completely foreign market. And the logic was that Korea as a country, and really Asia in general, is extremely obsessed with learning English. It's a huge cultural thing, and it's all human-based, largely. So human tutors, academies, classes, and so on. And we felt like, in some ways, this is the hardest market, right? It's the most competitive. And if we can build something that is AI-based, that feels categorically new and different, then we could win the market and then win everywhere else. So yeah, that was probably the pivotal moment.
How about Dojo's pivotal moment?
Yeah, well, there have been a few, but I'll pick one. So it sounds like similar to you, Andrew. We had excuse me. We had like basically a very high-level plan from the start that has kind of remained the same. So because the mission is to give every kid an education they love, a big part of that is how do you reach every kid on the planet? We're serious about that. There's about 1.8 billion kids under 13 on the planet. We want to reach all of them. We're a fraction of the way there today. It's a great start, but it's still just a start. So the question was, well, how do you grow? How do you spread? And we kind of stumbled into this, if I'm being honest. So we were in a fifth grade classroom in San Francisco. There was a science teacher. Her name was Jenna. And we were doing this like customer interview with her, seeing how she used Dojo in the classroom. This is years and years ago. And we thought she was a great teacher. A few months later, she applies to join Dojo. She's leaving the classroom. And we're like, oh, yeah, we were like 7 or 8 people at the time. And we're like, what? Yeah, come and do an internship. Like, we don't really know what to do with you, but come do an internship. And so she joined, and over the summer, she did this kind of covert data science project where she started to show us how Dojo was building communities in schools. So she was able to show us that we'd get one really excited, passionate teacher in a school who would then start to tell all their friends about it, and then how that teacher would tell someone else in another school, another district. And so we kind of stumbled into this idea that, hold on, community is a really important thing at a school level, but also across teachers. And so that kind of gave us the beginnings of some insights that we could use to grow Dojo. Now it's a community of millions of teachers and tens of millions of kids and families now, but that learning about community, like a year or two into the company, has really been just like one of the pillars for how Dojo has grown.
I mean, it's easy today to talk to folks and maybe they look at Speak and Dojo and think of it as somewhat of an overnight success, but I think it's important to look back and see the hours and time you all put in to build this business to get to where it is today. The journeys are both incredible. Now, the past 2 to 3 years, basically since the launch of GPT, has probably also felt like a decade in many ways for how fast things are moving. And so I want to kind of get a front lines perspective, both from customers and users, from you both, on how behavior has been changing, and frankly, what you all are doing within your own product roadmaps to adapt to this behavior change. Andrew, let's start with Speak users.
Yeah, I mean, it's been crazy, right? So for context, Speak in South Korea, as I just mentioned, it really started as a sort of supplemental speaking tool where we would get the user to just repeat a bunch of things, do a bunch of drills, and use speech recognition to provide them feedback. It was more of this scoped practice tool on the side. And then in 2022, LLMs came out, right? It was the whole ChatGPT moment. And we started, OpenAI actually led our Series B. So we started integrating a lot of these LLMs and building these new product experiences like AI lessons and role plays that we had been dreaming of this entire time. And we were really early on that curve. And I don't know if you all remember, but initially there was so much sort of like fear, uncertainty, doubt around hallucination and like inappropriate use of these models. It has felt like a decade since then. And now these types of systems are well understood, right? They're table stakes. The moderation behaviors and how things get flagged and so on are just totally, totally different. And I feel like the world kind of has now expects these types of features in almost every single tech product out there. So it's just been like a huge change in norms. I think it's allowed us to build major parts of the vision that were just not possible before. You had to hire a human, but now you can use these models to have immersive role-play conversations, to understand what about Spanish or whatever language that you're learning. So it's pretty amazing.
And that's a consumer perspective, and in individual learners, at Dojo, you have to think about classrooms, ramifications, students taking things home back to their parents. How has kind of the last couple years played out, and how has that impacted plans for the future? Yeah,
well, we deal with younger kids, right? So it's mostly kids under 13, and teachers and all that. So it's a very privileged and kind of, it's an important place to be, and you have to be very thoughtful about how you do it. So one of the things that we realized early was that, and I think I said this here a couple years ago when your co-founder was here, we were talking about how the problems haven't changed. Like teachers, kids, families still have a whole set of problems that they face, but what's different now is we've got, I think, honestly, the most powerful technology ever invented to help people learn and grow, to help solve those problems. And so, for example, with teachers, we talk to a lot of teachers, and we hear the same, it's been the same set of problems over the years. There's been like, hey, look, I keep planning all these lessons, I'm trying to personalize learning for all my kids, I have to design individual differentiated interventions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's a huge amount of admin work, as anyone who's spent time in a classroom knows. And it's kind of crazy to me that we ask teachers to spend, literally a day or two a full working day or two a week on admin work. I mean, these are people that could be amazing professionals doing amazing things with kids, but these are also problems that can be totally solved with the right kinds of co-pilots and tools. So we actually built a thing called Sidekick, which is basically a virtual teaching assistant for every teacher. And it takes away many of these tasks, massively reduces the admin work, and we are giving it to every teacher on Dojo for free. The other side of it is with younger kids, right? So one of the big jobs that you have to do as a kid is learn to read. It's the gateway to everything else you want to do in your life. And for a lot of reasons, it's not been taught in super great ways in a bunch of schools around the world. But it turns out the science is really good. Like, there's good research on how you can teach reading effectively. And so we are able to take some of that science and work with some of the foundational models. This product's coming out soon. It's out in like the early test groups this quarter. But it's an AI reading tutor, which can teach a kid from nothing to phonics, like full fluency in phonics, in 3 or 4 months. And that's just never been possible before in the history of the world. Like, a few people had that, and now every kid on the planet can have a reading tutor which teaches them to read. And think of the difference that makes in the world.
You both have kind of touched on, in a post-AI world, things have gotten easier, at least from a development perspective. You can spin up an application over the weekend. There are a lot of accessible tools. There's now MCP to ship data across models and different infrastructure you can leverage. You all were building in a pre-AI world and have built, real enterprise value in both of your companies. For founders today who are going into EdTech, how would you think about kind of the build versus buy in building a tech company? Because I think there are a lot of easy buttons you can press to get an MVP or a product out to market, but at the end of the day, owning your end user, your end customer, is what has made both of you really successful. So, any advice in kind of this new age of company building, that you would offer?
So I would say that now more than ever, the fundamentals matter. It is so critically important to just very, very deeply understand the problem that you're solving and build a specialized vertical solution, right? This is speak for language learning. And AI and engineering in general, writing code, is a means to an end. It's a tool, right? I think it's really dangerous to go chasing after shiny objects, and then you start building something people don't actually want, right? It's like, again, the YC, like, fundamental tagline, make something people want. That is even more important now than ever.
Sam, do you agree with that?
100% echo that. I think if I had to contribute something else, I'd say distribution really matters, I think, if you're a technology company, right? Like, if we wanted to reach like 50 kids, we would have started a school. But I think distribution really matters, and I think it's still so important to figure out how you are going to grow. Now, the good news is there's network effects and all that kind of thing, but the good news is the other way to grow is you make dramatically better experiences. Like, ChatGPT just caught everyone's imagination because it was just a magical experience. And we're in a world now where you can create truly like 100 or 1,000x better experiences. And so I think it's very exciting to be building products right now.
All right,
I have a quick follow-up to that, actually. So I do think one interesting paradox that has been on my mind is that, on one hand, the pace of AI in all of these systems has been so blistering, right? So fast over the past 2 years. And on the other hand, you can make a credible argument that the world hasn't changed that much since GPT-4 came out. There's a ton of real-world inertia. So I think for a lot of builders and founders, there's so much AI anxiety, and like, what if ChatGPT eats this thing, or like, what if Anthropic does, like, Y? And I really strongly believe that the world doesn't change unless we all do it and build it. And that's something that I just feel like a lot of founders miss.
Really great feedback. All right, get out the crystal ball. There's a lot of doom and gloom around AI and where things could end up in education and learning. Let's flip it. Like, let's get optimistic and bold. We wake up in 2030. What's one thing that you believe will happen in kind of the education and learning industry? Fire away, Sam.
Cool. Maybe this is a very obvious one, but look, I really do believe we're at like the most exciting time in the history of building technology products, to help people learn. Like it's the best technology ever. So very obvious one, I think, is pretty soon we're going to have a world where every kid on Earth can have a personal tutor that helps them learn and grow. And we solve, the Bloom's 2 sigma observation. Like we actually have a way to solve that now at a very large scale. There's many companies doing it, I'm sure, but like that seems very near term to me.
Andrew, did Sam steal your answer?
I was going to say pretty much the same thing, but maybe at a more micro level. I think that language fluency will become a fully solved problem within 5 years.
Andrew, Sam, thank you so much for doing this. It was an absolute pleasure.
Cheers, Ben.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, gentlemen, for that conversation. Our next speaker truly needs no introduction, but I'm going to give one anyway. Andrew Ng is one of the most influential voices in artificial intelligence today. He's the managing general partner at AI Fund, co-founder of Coursera, and formerly led the AI teams at Google and Baidu. His work has shaped how millions of people learn and understand the AI. And he continues to push the boundaries of how this technology can be used for good. Please join me in welcoming Andrew Ng.
Hey everyone, it's great to be back here at ASU+GSV. Since given my roots in AI and education, this has always felt like a bit of a home, and it's very kind of Michael and Deborah to have me back again. What I want to do today is share with you some AI technology trends that I think are affecting education. And more specifically, AI technology is leading to changes in terms of what we teach, and maybe the obvious one is we need more people to learn computer science and AI, as well as how we teach it. And AI, as you've seen over the last few days, is really transforming the workflows of a lot of the work that we do in education. And one other thing I hope you take away from this presentation is fast prototyping is becoming a new way to invent things. And this will be relevant, I think, to many of you, either in entrepreneurship or in large businesses or in academia. But first, let's start with what we teach. I think because of AI-assisted coding, the opportunities to learn to code, I think the world needs more people that know how to code. Many years ago, some friends of mine at Stanford told me about an experience that they had doing a lot of work to teach some high school teachers to code, so that the high school teachers teaching other subjects would then teach computer science. What happened? They told me that almost predictably, the high school teachers would quit their job and get a much higher paying job at Google. So that didn't completely work out. But on Saturday, I was speaking with Kyle Creasley, who is actually a basketball coach, graduated with a bachelor's degree in physical education, and he's now the coach for the Liberty Creek Wolves basketball team. And he has been working with Cure Learning, a company that AI Fund, my team, is involved in, to teach computer science. So he went from doing this, and still does this, to additionally also sitting in the classroom teaching computer science. And I actually asked him, what are you most excited about? What's most fun about teaching computer science? And he actually showed me a chart that he had generated with code that he wrote himself, where he took statistics from his players to plot 3-point volumes versus 3-point percentages and show of his kids, who was doing what. And I thought he's a very good basketball coach. Frankly, talking to him, he made me want to play more basketball, which I don't know if I should. But this is a basketball coach who got an endorsement in math, but now teaching computer science, when 2 years ago, he'd never written a line of Python. So how do you make that happen? I think that AI creates a lot of opportunities, including some surprising ones, like the ones with Kyle. But taking the macro level picture, this is what I think of as an AI stack. At the lowest level are the semiconductor companies. On top of that are the clouds, so the hyperscalers, and then there are the foundation AI models trained on top of that. And even though a lot of the buzz and hype is on all of these layers, often happens when it's technology, new technology, I think the biggest opportunities are actually at the application layer, where almost by definition, the applications had better generate even more revenue, in order for the technology providers, or in order for them to be able to pay the technology providers. And quick shout out, I see Daphne from Common Sense Media here, who does a lot of privacy work for schools. And I think the applications, almost by definition, had to be even more successful, even more revenue generating than the technology providers that are getting so much of the buzz. And in terms of applications, I think many of you have already heard about Coursera Coach. I think it's a very good product. Kind of chatbot, RAG-enabled, context-aware to help students. I know many businesses have since launched related products, but I think having students also practice quizzes, also course summaries. Coursera's data is that this actually helps learners more likely to pass quiz on first attempt, and learners actually work through items significantly faster that use a tutor, that use a Coursera Coach like this. So a lot of applications we can build, of which Coursera Coach is just one example. And with so much going on in AI, I want to share with you what I think is maybe the one most important AI technology trend, which I think is agentic AI workflows. About a year and a half ago, to the technical community, the term agentic AI used to have a meaning, but I think 6, 8 months ago, a bunch of marketers got a hold of it and started slapping on everything, and it kind of lost its meaning. But I want to share with you how the AI technical community maybe thinks about agentic workflows and why I think it's important. So it turns out that when you use a large language model and write a prompt to get a response, that's a bit like going to a human, or in this case, going to an AI and asking it, please type out an essay for me by writing from the first word to the last word, all in one go without ever using backspace. And humans, we don't do our best writing like this, and it turns out nor do computers. But in contrast, with agentic workflows, you can do things like ask an AI system, please write an essay outline, then ask you to do any research, then download some web pages, use that to write the first draft, revise it, and so on. And so the workflow looks like this, where you do some thinking or some research, and then revise your piece, and then do some more thinking, and you go like this for a while. So it takes longer, but the results in a much higher quality work output. So my team at AI Fund, we find this absolutely critical for tons of applications, be it reviewing tricky legal documents, to providing better healthcare or health recommendations, or frankly, we actually have a startup working on tariff compliance, which suddenly became very relevant this week. But for a lot of these complex workflows, agentic workflows are critical to reaching a much higher level of performance. And maybe one example of this, Coursera has a course builder feature, which is quite popular with many of its enterprise large businesses that want to take existing content created by trusted authoritative sources and reassemble this to become a course that meets the needs of a particular team or business. So you can go in and type what's the course topic, what are the learning objectives, can find content from Coursera's catalog created by trusted authorities. In this case, I told it to use my course, Genesis AI for Everyone. Take the content, rearrange it, present a new learner view, and so create a new course by rearranging existing items, which for higher education and adult professional education, I think is very helpful to have trusted authorities on cutting-edge topics and then assemble that into brand new experiences for learners. And I think just I feel like I want to share with you what I'm seeing in AI, but also related to education. But so in terms of what I see in AI, I actually would present an update to this picture of the AI stack, which is over the last year, there's been increasingly a new agentic orchestration layer that means that there's software that helps you build applications, and the software will help you coordinate or orchestrate a lot of different calls to the layers underneath. But this does not actually change the basic conclusion I had just now, which is that the application layer is going to be the most valuable layer on some time scale, but the agentic orchestration layer makes it even easier to build these applications on top. So if someone asks you what's the most important AI technology trend, I would say is AI agents or agentic AI. But there's so much going on in AI, I actually thought I'd share with you a few other important trends I think will affect EdTech. And I actually started off with a list of 9, but didn't have time, so I decided to cut it down to just what I thought would be the most 4 relevant additional trends to share with you, which is AI assistants enabling everyone to code, fast prototyping, voice stack, and data engineering. I'll hit each of these briefly. And the first one affects what we teach, and the second, third, and fourth affect more how we teach. So first, AI assistants enabling everyone to code. So even last year and this year, there have been some people advising others not to learn coding on the grounds that AI will automate it. I think we'll look back on this as some of the worst career advice ever given. When coding went from punch cards to keyboards and terminals, that made coding easier, so a lot more people started to code. Actually, in that time, in that era, in the 1960s, there were some people predicting the demise of coding because if you don't need punch cards, it's so easy. Anyone could do it, so you don't need programmers anymore. And then again, when we moved from assembly to modern programming languages, demise of programming was predicted. Again, false. When it became easier, more people wrote code. Went from text editors to IDEs, integrated development environments, most recently to AI coding assistants, or even something called vibe coding, which is a term that maybe isn't a great description, but refers to writing code of AI where you sometimes barely even look at the code. And as coding becomes easier, people should code a lot more. And what I'm already seeing is, for certain teams that are not software engineering roles, people that know how to code significantly outperform people that don't. And I think we've actually crossed the barrier where maybe on my teams, the marketers that code often can do tons of stuff that the marketers don't. The recruiters that code can do tons of things that the recruiters that don't. I don't know, a few weeks ago, the Associate General Counsel of AI Fund, he's a lawyer, not a software engineer, he was writing code to help him screen NDAs, right? It's one of the annoying parts of his job, reading tons of partner non-disclosure agreements. So he was writing code. And so my associate general counsel, my finance, my head of finance, a number of my marketing team members, many of them that are not software engineers are now much more effective because they know how to code. And I think we've actually reached that tipping point where it makes sense to, frankly, get pretty much everyone to learn how to code. Oh, maybe another fun fact, everyone at AI Fund, pretty much everyone at AI Fund has a GitHub account, and pretty much everyone knows how to, write code, deploy to Heroku, and things like that. And I actually see an increasing performance gap between the team members that know how to code and the ones that don't. And I think this gap will only grow over time, driven by AI assistants making it so much easier to code. And just one more story that really convinced me of this, which is that when I was teaching Generative AI for Everyone, it's a deep learning AI course hosted on Coursera, my team wanted to generate background art images like this, right, for decoration. And so I was working with a collaborator that understood art history. So he knew the language of art. He knew how to prompt Mid-Journey using the language of art, the artistic inspiration, the palette, the style. And so he could get results like this, whereas I don't understand art history the way that he did. And so my attempts to prompt Mid-Journey were, please make pretty robots of pictures for me. And I was never as effective as my collaborator, Tommy, at generating artwork like this. So looking to the future, one of the most important skills for anyone is the ability to tell a computer exactly what you want so they can do it for you. And now and for the quite some time, I think having that deeper understanding of how computers actually work at kind of a coding conceptual level will be critical for anyone, not just software engineers, but really anyone, to know how to instruct a computer to tell what they want so that it can do it for them and make them much more powerful in a huge range of job roles. And I think one of the things I believe as well, this is a deep learning AI course also on Coursera, is to teach people to code in this new reality. I think the way we used to teach software engineering 2-3 years ago, no one's going to work the way we did 2 years ago in coding, right? The world has changed. And so when I teach coding, there's our platform with me giving lectures, coding environment. We actually try to teach what we think the future of work will be. So we don't prepare people even for the jobs today, but prepare people for the jobs, now and in the near future where you will be developing with AI as a pair programmer, as a thought partner. So we try to explicitly teach people how to use chatbots and how to use AI in their workflow. All right. Oh, and I think I hadn't talked much about deep learning AI before at this stage, but deep learning AI goes to empower everyone to build with AI. I think we're really fortunate to be working with, I think, pretty much all of the leading AI companies, because there's a vendor-neutral, empowerment platform. We're fortunate to work with pretty much everyone, all the leading AI companies, to share cutting-edge knowledge with the community. All right. So that was AI-assisted coding, hopefully soon enabling everyone to code. Another important tool is fast prototyping as a mechanism for innovation. And let me share what I mean by that. When I think about software engineering, I think of maybe two major buckets of work. Sometimes, if we have an idea, we build a quick and dirty prototype to see if it works. And then sometimes my teams also write or maintain production level software. It turns out AI-assisted coding, depending on what study you trust, and I've not found very rigorous ones, depending on what consultant report you trust, maybe it's making writing and maintaining large-scale production software, updating legacy software, I don't know, 30 or 50% more efficient, which is huge, right? Definitely, let's use AI to help with this. But even though 30 or 50% productivity boost is huge, this is still dwarfed by building quick and dirty prototypes, which is more like 10 times faster. And I think in Silicon Valley, we had the mantra, right? Move fast and break things, and this had a bad reputation. Don't take a picture of this one, because I need to change it. And I think some people said, well, we should not move fast, but I think that's a mistake. All right, now I've crossed it out, you can take this picture, don't get in trouble. I think a better update to this mantra is to move fast and be responsible. And I actually do find that a lot of teams can find ways to move fast, to ship to small groups of users in a safe environment, and really get things going without being irresponsible and without taking significant risk in terms of harming other people. And in terms of why building prototypes is so fast, it turns out building standalone prototypes and applications requires less legacy integration with legacy data sources infra. And frankly, when my teams are building prototypes, I will often tell them, go ahead and build insecure software. If it runs only on your laptop and you're not going to hack into your own laptop, it's fine if you have insecure software. I know, I feel like every time I say that, I feel like someone's going to criticize me for that, but I tell my teams, write insecure software. If you're the only one using it and you don't plan to hack your own computer, it's fine. But that lets us prototype very quickly with low reliability, low scalability, low security. And then a lot of the time we go, oh, that doesn't work, and we toss it and never sees the light of day. And only if it works, then do we invest in all the things needed to take it to scale. And I see also many large enterprises now starting to think, maybe we can systematically build 20 prototypes, and if that's the price of finding 2 that work really well, that's fine, so long as the cost of prototyping is low. So I don't regret that many POCs never make it into production, if that's an explicit part strategy of how we quickly innovate. A lot more to say about this, but this is important for large corporate innovations as well as how startups operate. Let's see, moving on, I think third trend, voice stack. I think it would be very useful for education. I saw a number of applications already. Building voice applications is much easier than it used to be a year ago. And I think there are 2 main technology options. One is direct generation. I think OpenAI did a really nice job with the real-time API, and many companies are actually right now, maybe not yet released, but I know many companies are training better direct voice generation applications, foundation models, so it'll become even easier over this year. I'm actually very confident of that. But it turns out that while this is great for building prototypes and demos and for low stakes conversations, we found that direct voice generation, at least right now, is not as controllable as we want for the high stakes conversations. We kind of don't want to say the wrong thing too often. And so for a lot of applications, my team ended up using this type of voice pipeline-based generation, where we convert the speech to text, have an LM agentic workflow to think what to say, and then have that be read back out as speech. And it turns out that for a lot of applications, figuring out what to say, that turned out to be, frankly, quite challenging. Just for fun, this is an avatar of me.
Hey, how can I help you today?
I'm attending the ASU+GSV conference. What tips do you have for making this a productive trip?
ASU+GSV is a great conference. Here are some tips to make the most of it. First, plan ahead. Review the agenda and schedule and prioritize the sessions and speakers you want to see. Next, come prepared with business cards and an elevator pitch. You never know who you'll meet. Take notes and follow up with new contacts within 24 hours. Also, be open to unexpected conversations and connections. Some of the best opportunities can come from chance encounters. Lastly, don't forget to take breaks.
All right, I find talking to my own avatar a really weird experience, but if you want to talk to me in avatar form, you can please play with this. And I think this creates new opportunities as well, maybe new modalities. And it turns out that we worked on this for like 1.5 years now. Even now, we still struggle to make it say the similar words as I would. Make it sound like me in terms of pronunciation, we could do that. The graphics is doable, but make it choose words the way that I would. That's actually been surprisingly difficult. We're still working on that. Last trend, I think data engineering, this would be relevant to a lot of schools. So data engineering has always been quite important, but its management of unstructured data, meaning text, images, video, audio, is even more important than before. Because previously, we had a lot of PDF files or images or text that we didn't know how to process. It just sat there in some data warehouse, and we didn't do that much with it. But AI, generative AI, can now process this data to get value out of it. So this is increasing the relative value of bringing siloed data together to feed to the AI, because AI can now make sense of a lot of this. So I actually see many large businesses doing very large data re-architecting issues, not just for the structured data, the numbers, but for the unstructured data. I think this would be important as well. All right, so in terms of all of these trends in AI, I think that collectively, speaking of various people earlier at this conference as well, I think all of us collectively are really trying to think, where is education going? I think higher ed and adult continuing education are very different than K-12, but I want to share with you some work by Kira Learning that I mentioned before that I think is actually really exciting. So I've been working closely with the founders, Andre Pazzanetti and Jagrati Agarwal and the team. They don't want me to point them out because they're very humble, but they're actually here. But I think that, I actually made this video last night. This is a demo of Kira Learning's AI toolkit showing lessons. So I typed lesson functions illustrated using monster truck examples. My son loves monster trucks, so I thought, let's try that. 8th grade, select the APCS standard. So check a couple of the standards. And then, let's see. So you can hyper-personalize. My son likes monster truck for some weird reason, so I threw that in. So this is a set of learning targets, learning objectives. On the right, I'm typing, add a learning target on debugging. What did I say last night? Oh, illustrative race cars that my son also likes. And then it takes the learning targets and edits it. You can also go in and just type directly yourself, but I thought just prompted and have it fix it for me. I like the learning targets. Let me hit generate outline. I did edit the video to speed up the spinning wheels a little bit, just by not that much, but just to speed up this a little bit. Here's the generated lessons, and including, and then now, let's see. There's a lesson outline, sorry. It said encourage peer review. Maybe in my classroom, if I don't want peer review, I just say, review it carefully, right? So here I'm editing directly. You can also prompt the AI to do it if you don't want to edit directly. And now I'm happy with the outline, hit generate the entire lesson, and then, different parts of the lesson with some quizzes and so on, and also generated code for the students to learn these types of coding experiences. And I feel like, by the way, Kyle, the basketball coach, is able to use tools like these to help his development course. Oh, this is a debugging exercise. So the AI, we told it to generate buggy code. I couldn't help myself, I have to fix bugs, so I went to the student view, and kind of, right. So this is a student view of if the student is consuming the content and taking this course, right? I could run the code if I want, but just to save time. One of the neat features, if I'm an instructor that's not very familiar with CS, is this any good or not? So one of the features as well is the eval feature, where you have AI automatically evaluate its own work to try to judge how good it is. And then you can also ask the AI to fix its own problems that it found if you haven't generated the content yet. So I think these complex agentic workflows really set up teachers for success. When I was chatting with Kyle, the instructor I mentioned at the start, he actually mentioned to me that he's been teaching some math. He had to do a ton of work doing prep for math, but teaching CS this way, he actually had less time less prep was needed for his CS courses, even though, frankly, he's much newer to teaching CS than to teaching math. And just to show you one more thing. So just as the workflow of educators is very diverse, the tools we need to support educators and support students will be very diverse. This is why AI, as a general purpose technology, will do many, many different tasks, just like human teachers and human students do many, many different tasks. I'll just show you one other one that's really cool. I think at this meeting, we've heard a lot about chatbots to support students. This is one to support teachers. So this is the instructor interface. I click teach. I'm in a lesson on naming variables. And I'm going to click student support, so you can see the work, of different students. So it looks like Archie Erickson has it right. The student CC has some bugs in his or her code, and so the variable, not sure you can see this, one best dessert is wrong. But if I was an instructor, I'm not quite sure why is this wrong. What do I do to the student? I can go and ask for help, And now the AI has told me, oh, the student doesn't seem to understand invalid variable names, and also is telling me, why don't you, the teacher, go and ask the student what happens if you change the first character of one best dessert. So if I, as a teacher, am not sure exactly what to do, the AI doesn't really give the answer to the student, but give the answer to me as a teacher, and then also be very direct in suggesting something I could just go say to the student. So some of the feedback teams receive is teachers really like these very specific suggestions they can just execute. And then also, I guess, as expected, teachers also can use these tools to learn to code better themselves, right? So just to summarize, I think AI is a general purpose technology. These are some of the key trends that are making it even easier to build a huge range of applications in AI. And I think AI is changing what we teach. We are at the point where I would love for the next generation to all know how to code, to all know AI, because this will be an important tool for all of our children growing up to really master and use throughout their lives. And additionally, teaching has a very complex workflow, and AI is a wonderful tool to build many, many things to transform many parts of how we deliver education as well. And I think when you go home after this conference and you go back, talk to your friends, talk to teams, this is really such a, oh, that's weird, such a wonderful time to build. I find myself, frankly, coding pretty much every weekend because my team has a lot more ideas than we have capacity or anything to get working. So I should still code decent amounts. And I just want to close with one quote, which is, chatted with Carl last week, who's using a Cure Learning platform, and you can check out the Cure Learning website if you want to sign up for beta access to see the features I was demoing just now. I actually asked Carl, why do you do this and what do you want to do? He said, I want to keep teaching CS, I want to have a wide knowledge of this topic. I want to progress is teaching even more advanced topics like cybersecurity and web design. He wants to help students go deeper and further in this subject. And I was actually really inspired that this basketball coach is a great coach, is now so passionate about CS to be doing this for his students. And while CS is the one subject I showed, Cure Learning is expanding to many subjects across K-12. And I think we'll be, collectively, I think with these AI tools, we can transform a lot of teachers as well as a lot of students' lives. So with that, let me say thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you. And I think I'm supposed to invite Greg Hart onto stage. So, there he is. Okay, Greg.
Hello, Andrew. Good to see you.
So, for those of you that don't know yet, Greg is Coursera's CEO, who just joined us 2 months ago, just over 2 months ago. And Michael and Deborah were very kind to give me the opportunity to introduce Greg to everyone here at ASU+GSV. So, yeah, welcome, Greg.
Thank you very much. Great to be here with you all.
So we're going to chat for 15 minutes, but I think Greg, as Greg knows, everyone at Coursera, the board, the whole team was really excited when you decided to join us earlier this year. So what drew you to Coursera?
Fantastic question. I couldn't be happier about being Coursera. It's been great spending time with the team and getting to know the space and the company. As I think about my career, I spent most of my career at Amazon and was focused on building and scaling businesses and using technology to solve problems for customers and deliver better user experiences. And so with Coursera, there was a real opportunity to apply that experience and that approach to a space that has an immense societal benefit. And so the mission of Coursera of democratizing access to education could not be more appealing. And I think Coursera is incredibly well positioned to help address that mission and make progress against it. And we're at an incredibly interesting time right now in the world. The pace of change is only accelerating with Gen AI. And so the need for learning experiences and upskilling and reskilling has never been greater. And not only is AI driving a lot of that, but it also really provides a vehicle to help address that, to help continue to evolve the learner experience and improve that. And so I felt it was a fantastic place to take the experience that I had before and really expand the societal impact. So couldn't be more thrilled to be here.
Yeah. You mentioned your previous experience. I should say, I think all of us could be more thrilled that you're with Coursera. You mentioned your previous experience. So many of you, I bet many of you, have an Amazon Echo Alexa in your house or use Amazon Prime Video. Disclose ourselves on Amazon's board, but many of you may not know that Greg actually ran Alexa and also ran Amazon Prime Video. So what lessons do you have from that era, running one of the most beloved AI products that's in many of our homes, as well as one of the most important media businesses? What lessons do you have from that era to share with everyone at ASU+GSV?
A few takeaways that I think I'm trying to apply at Coursera, but I think are also relevant for what we're going through in the EdTech space more broadly right now. Number one, change is constant, so build organizations that are really nimble and really resilient to change, and try and instill that in your teams. Number two, really focus deeply on the customer. And so that was something that was certainly a mantra at Amazon. At Coursera, our customer is the learner. The same is true for many of you in this audience. And so focus deeply on the learner as your customer, and then how do you address their needs? By focusing specifically on what I would call durable customer needs, so the durable needs of the learner, and then figure out how do you build capabilities that help you make progress on solving problems for those learners every single day, day after day, in a continuous fashion. So an example of like a durable learner need, like there is no way that it will not be true that in 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 years that learners will not want a more personalized learning experience. There is also no way that it won't be true that over those time horizons, or any time horizon, that they won't want more effective outcomes. So build teams that are focused on making continual progress on those capabilities. And then finally, sort of to go with the nimble and resilient organizations piece, I'm a big believer in approaching every problem with optimism and with a really positive outlook, and then building teams that are passionate about solving those problems. Because I think passion is a force multiplier, and if you're an optimist, you're naturally inclined to look for solutions, to continue to ask questions and be creative about how you approach things. And so I think those are certainly things that I'm trying to do at Coursera, but I think they're also relevant for the moment that we're in within this space.
Yeah, one thing that I think has really gone well at Coursera is all this time there was always a learners first mentality, and I feel like a lot of the team, I think vast majority of the team wakes up every morning, tries to figure out what to do for learners, and that's the most important thing. And that loyalty to learners, I think not just unique to Coursera, but I think for many organizations as well, serves us well in EdTech. So you've been CEO for a little bit more than 2 months now, and done a lot in that time. How should, and I know you've been thinking very deeply about Coursera's strategy and work with partners. How should people in ASU+GSV work with you or work with Coursera?
So I've spent the first couple of months, not surprisingly, just diving into all aspects of the organization and the company and our partners, and a few key takeaways. Number one, Coursera is really at its heart a company and an organization that tries to solve problems for learners through partnerships. So obviously our genesis, with Andrew and Daphne, comes from higher education. We have partners across industry. We serve individual learners. We serve our partners in enterprise to help them upskill their workforce. So continuing to strengthen and build those partnerships is a core part of what I'm focused on and what we will continue to do. There are a number of really amazing assets that I feel very fortunate that Coursera has built over time. One, we've had tremendous success about serving learners all over the world, so 168 million registered learners. Two, through those partnerships with higher education, with industry, we have a very diverse catalog of curricula and courses that range from all the way from full degrees to micro-credentials. And so that gives us a lot of flexibility. And then, finally, and sort of a little bit strategically, we have a $700 million balance sheet. And so we don't have any debt. And so that gives us a lot of strategic flexibility and optionality as we think about how to go forward and where we could, apply that money to help better serve learners and help the business grow.
And I think in this dynamic environment, the strong balance sheet creates a lot of options. And I think as we've seen throughout this conference, a lot of talk about AI and a sense that AI is transforming education. I know that you've thought a lot in your career about invention and innovation. So can you say a bit about the approach you're taking at Coursera on invention and innovation?
Absolutely. So, over my time at Amazon, I've been really fortunate to play a small part in some, pretty meaningful inventions from an Amazon perspective, Alexa and Echo being certainly one of the main ones. At Coursera, some of the things that I think we're trying to do are not dissimilar from the challenges that we were trying to solve for with Alexa, which is how do you continue to evolve the learner experience so that you're delivering things that learners may not be directly asking you to do, but that will deeply enhance their experience. And so one of the ways that we try and do that is by organizing as close to the learner as possible. I'm a big believer in having invention happen as close to the customer as possible. Like, of course, I'll have my own ideas, but I'm a much bigger believer in all the ideas that come from the teams that are thinking about those problems very deeply on a day-to-day basis. They're gonna have much better ideas than I will. And so empowering those teams by really helping them focus in a long-term way on those problems. So we have teams that are focused continually on improving the experience for our partners in higher education and industry as they create course content. How do you make that easier? How do you apply AI to that so that it becomes a simpler course creation process, and also one where you can augment that course after it gets created regularly with AI so that it stays relevant, and we take the learner feedback that we get so that it continually improves. The same thing is true on the learner side. You see that reflected in things like Coursera Coach, which Andrew spoke about earlier, continuing to invest in those things. And then just doing regular, for me, I love spending time with the team as they're demoing things that they're working on. It's one of the most fun parts of my day or my week when I get to do that, and so trying to find opportunities to do that as well.
Yeah, actually, that's true. I think the Coursera team, including Mustafa, CTO, and a lot of the team, is very deep in Gen AI. And so I think while Coursera's released and announced some features, there's a ton of work going on in experimentation and a lot of fun internal demos that if they work out, will hopefully see the light of day.
Exactly, yeah. We just released a feature called Dialogue that is really aimed at course creators, and it's helping enable them to create an item type within their course that is an interactive AI-driven dialogue for the learner. So to help the learner progress through a course, make sure that they deeply understand a topic, spend more time if the learner's having trouble with it, and course instructors can take their knowledge from the material that they're providing, but also from their knowledge of pedagogy, and really apply that and think about, okay, where in this learning experience should I introduce a dialogue? And that is an instructor-driven decision, while at the same time we have coach, that's a learner-driven decision. And so we have both of those materials, and we'll keep iterating and improving on those, leveraging Gen AI to do that.
Yeah, it's a great feature. Dialogue is a great feature the instructors seem to really like. Yeah. One of the challenges that I know you've been speaking with a lot of people about is in higher education is one of the gems of the world. It's one of the most precious things, I think, in the world. It has lifted so many lives, made so many people better off. In the United States, higher education, as we all know, is facing tremendous stress in terms of funding on the research side and on the education side. A lot of criticism, maybe with some justification, but also a lot of criticisms that may not be as justified about the high cost of higher education, and then also more challenging for international students to get access and stay in the United States with visa revocations and things like that. So what do you think is the right role for us, for Coursera, to support higher education?
Obviously, higher education is the genesis of Coursera with you and Daphne coming out of Stanford, and so higher education and our partners in academia across, not just domestically here in the US, but across the world, are incredibly important partners for us. And it's a space that is evolving, and it's under stress, to different degrees in different countries. There are a number of things that I think we can bring to that partnership to really help our educator partners and our university partners. So we've built over the years a number of really deep, strong partnerships with industry. And increasingly, we're seeing demand from employers for students and people in the workforce to have skills that they demand that are changing really rapidly. And so as academia and higher education tries to keep pace with that change, we can bring some of the instruction that's created by our partners in industry and create micro-credentials. And we've worked very closely with ACE here in the US, ECTS in Europe, NSQF in India to get credit recommendations from those bodies for those micro-credentials. So we have 55 different micro-credentials that are now recommended for credit. That's a fantastic way for our university partners to augment all of the curricula that they have today with things that are changing really rapidly, but they're deeply in demand from employers and from the job market. And so that's a great example of one of the partnerships that we can bring. We can also continue to use AI to help inform back to them, here's the data we're seeing about how learners are going through their courses on Coursera and how they can continue to improve those courses to deliver better outcomes for learners. And so those are a couple of the examples that I think about.
Yeah, it feels like in the case of AI, no university in the world has enough AI faculty, and it's so difficult to have faculty adapt to the changing circumstances to teach whatever we really need to teach right now. So I think the working upon is to have great content, higher education, hopefully will help on multiple dimensions, but hopefully our community can band together, frankly, in this very challenging set of circumstances to get through whatever we need to get through and come out, well, hopefully not too much weaker, maybe even stronger on the other side. I think well, maybe just time for one last thing. It's really great that you're here at ASU+GSV, just 2 months into the job. I think hopefully to Michael and Deborah, this is a sign of how much Coursera respects this gathering and everyone here. Before we jump, do you have any last words to share?
It's been fantastic to be here. Thank you, Michael, Deborah, and all the folks at ASU as well. This is an amazing event. It's been a great baptism for me in the space, getting to meet many of you and learn more about some of the challenges that you're facing and potentially how we can collaborate and partner on helping to solve those for our collective audience, our collective learner community. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. And thank all of you for tuning in on the live stream and on YouTube. Everyone, enjoy your breakout sessions, and we're going to see you back right here at 4:45.